Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It's Andrew Ross, your host. With me today is David Booth, renowned automotive journalist in Canada, Motormouth. You may know him as. I know him as a guy I used to work with when he was just working on trade magazines some 30 something years ago. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Yes, it is a little bit like old hometown week. I'm not sure how long we worked together, but it was at least 10 years.
Oh,
It
all of
might have
that.
been
Yeah, yeah,
15,
maybe a little
yeah,
more.
15 or 20.
Yeah, and this is obviously top of mind for everybody in the automotive space right now is the recently announced pause pause in federal funding for an EV incentive. But there's a lot more going on out there than that. I mean, maybe we'll start off. What's your take on? I mean, it was a pretty hurried affair, right? I mean, most people didn't hear about the pause until Friday the 10th, and then certainly by Monday it was all over, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories on that. I mean, personally, I go with the incompetence theory because um, I remember when they started the incentives back in 2019, they made the announcement for the amount of money that you were the EV, upper limit of the EV cost for you to be able to get your $5,000 incentive. And what they did is, I think it was 50,000 bucks, and there were a few cars, their very base price was underneath that money, but soon as anybody optioned anything, they were over. And the way they had written the rule, those wouldn't have qualified. So there wouldn't have been hardly any cars qualifying for the incentive. So I did my investigation, and as far as I know, the reason why they did it that way is their investigation of the auto industry was just let's go online, look at the automakers manufacturer sites, look at what the base price of the cars were looking for, and then we'll go by that. They did, in other words, they did about an hour's research. And then, of course, they had to backpedal and then make the convoluted rules, which we have now, and they continue, which is the car has to have the vehicle to qualify has to have a car below a certain price, and then it can have a whole bunch of trims up. So that's why, I mean, it was completely incompetent. That's why I'm wondering, like you said, they said they were pausing at on Friday. Either Saturday or Sunday, they ran out of money. And by Monday, I think at 12:15, they sent dealers out an official notice saying you can't be on this program. Now, what the actual numbers were, I'm told, and again, incompetence, that there was on Friday when they announced the pause, there was 71 million bucks still in the program, 71 million and change. A number of us did an estimate using the some combination of the $5,000 EV incentive and the $2,500 PHEV
Yeah, the
incentive,
plug-in,
and
the
came
short
up
range
with
plug-in. Yep.
yeah, and came up with some number between 15 and 16,000 cars as of last Friday were still able to be
Like
subsidized.
funding
There's
available for.
yeah,
So
funding
yeah,
of funding available for those. So from my mind, there's no freaking way 16,000 cars EVs were sold between Friday noonish, let's say,
yeah,
and either Saturday or Sunday noonish.
yeah.
Not a chance. Somebody counted wrong. I don't know what went wrong, but the explanation that they sold that many cars on a Friday afternoon and a Saturday morning is pretty
Yeah,
nonsensical.
it's a little. It kind of defies credibility for sure, and certainly, although my market space is the independent aftermarket. I do feel for the business people at the dealer level who suddenly find themselves in a very different kind of situation, and yet still, as they have stated. The groups representing the dealers have stated, still with these mandates to reach certain targets. Again, not for 5 to 10 years down the road, but still, it, you can see how they can say this is a little hard to take, right? So
Well, here's okay. First off, I'll say you said defies credibility. I think this government has a history, if not a habit, of defying credibility. But we'll move on from my political affiliations. The problem for um, these EV incentives right now that they're gone, and they're, let's not forget, they're also leaving Quebec. And I need to do this detail. Quebec had $7,000 incentive in December. January 1st, it was supposed to drop to $4,000 for the rest of the year, except that they ran out of money. They're running out of money on February 1st as well. So if you were a Quebec buyer on December 31st, you would have got $12,000. On February 1st, you're getting zero.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem for dealers. And I know that in the aftermarket, like you said, I did aftermarket for at least 25 years. I know there's not a lot of sympathy towards dealers, but here's the problem that affects everybody is that the incentives are gone, but the EV mandates remain. So that automakers, and this won't be the dealers, though they'll be affected by it, the automakers, a Mazda, a Subaru, a Toyota, a General Motors, if they don't sell whatever percentage, they're different for Canada's EV mandate and Quebec's, but if they don't sell whatever quota is required by the EV mandate in question, okay, they get penalized a whole bunch of money. They either got to buy EV credits from like a Tesla or a Rivian, or they got to buy them directly from the government. Either way, it's millions upon millions of dollars if you miss your quota. On the other hand, they sort of went along with it as long as they were being incentivized, because the consumers don't look to be to be wanting or motivated to buy these cars in the numbers required without incentives. So they're taking away their incentives, but they're still punishing them. That's just, I mean, I don't have a word for how ridiculous it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the points that and you did sort of raise it is that although we sort of talk about both, domestically and internationally, 2030 and 2035 dates for mandates, there's a ramping up in Canada, or there's supposed to be ramping up of certain percentages by certain dates, even though it would come down to, 100% new vehicles by 2035. And I can't recall exactly the numbers, but, 20% by next year and et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So, these are all targets along the way that are supposed to be met as far as that mandated sales percentage for zero emission vehicles, as they're called, even though obviously a
Yeah.
hybrid is not that, which is another issue. We can go on and on.
I've
So,
actually
so there's a
discussed
lot of
that.
issues, right? There's still to come to the forefront on what happens with all of this, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, here here is and I and for either it might be unfortunate that I'm the only person that's thought about the big picture. I haven't heard anybody discuss this myself. And again, I'm not sure if it's really, really important to the aftermarket service people. I'm sure it's important to the aftermarket businesses. Here's the real big problem. Last year, there was a Canadian EV mandate, there was a Canadian EV incentive. In the States, there was an American EV incentive, $7,500 to consumers, US dollars. That's about $11,000 Canadian. That's a big amount of money. And they sort of had a semi de facto EV mandate. One was the emissions regulations that are tightening, that were sort of saying that you had to make an EV or a certain number. But then you also had the California waiver that allows California to do no gas cars after 2035. And that's somewhere between 14 and 15 states have decided to copy because they're allowed,
Right.
and would mean roughly 45% of the cars sold in the States would be subject to that 2035 EV mandate. Okay, that was what was at before. Fast forward, well, till January 22nd and maybe a little longer, the federal Canadian EV incentive is gone. The American EV incentive is almost assuredly gone as soon as Trump takes the oath of office. The Canadian EV mandate now is 97.72% gone. as soon as Poilievre gets elected. And if you consider that March 24th, when the Parliament prorogues, it's 51 days. They're going to get a, what do you call it? No confidence
Vote of
vote.
confidence, vote of non-confidence. Yeah, almost a
Non
certainty. I can't imagine how it would not happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and then 51 days later is the longest the election can be. And by which takes us, I think I calculated May 24th, sometimes around there. And again, like Trump, the next day, he's going to cancel the EV mandate. Now that's both sides' incentive gone and our EV mandate gone. The other thing that I do quite a bit in my job is analyzing the big picture. And unlike other times where the California waiver for an EV mandate was under threat, and really it was more talk than anything else, like a 2% chance it would go away. Trump really wants to get rid of it. He has a willing Supreme Court, and if you want, I can go into the details. I won't. You don't need it, but I would say there's a 40 to 50% chance that at some time in the Trump administration, the California waiver goes away. Now, all the things we've talked about in Canada, the incentive and the EV mandate, that hurts Canada. That hurts our EV sales. That hurts some stuff. But if California's EV mandate, like they're the start of all this stuff, they're the ones who started all this stuff. Quebec virtually copied it for their original EV mandate. If California goes down with an EV mandate, and all the states that are conjoined with them go down, the EV industry is in ruins. And I'm not going to pretend anymore to tell anybody how that affects your business. All I'm saying is it will affect your business. It'll affect pretty much everything about your business in so many different ramifications as possible. I can't imagine. And this is well within the realm of possibility. Just to recap, there are four pillars as far as I'm concerned: California rebate, Canadian rebate, Canadian incentives, EV incentives. These three, EV incentives in Canada and US, and EV mandate in Canada, are without question almost 100% sure to be gone. And the EV mandate in California is under threat like under no other time. That's
Sure.
a seismic shift in the landscape for automotive production, which affects your industry.
Right. Yeah. And this is the thing. I mean, we're going back to although I guess we really many of the even on the our, what we call now our traditional ICE powertrain technologies, they're structured the way they are with the controls the way they are because they were pushed and mandated through moves in California. A lot of it. I mean, going back decades, right? And so they've been a real driving force in far as what vehicles are equipped with, and then of course the EV mandates, which they've been at the forefront of, and what of course you're referring to is the memoranda of understanding that the many of the other states are basically signed on saying whatever California does, we do, and those are driven by kind of state environmental organizations, right? Out of California, and then everybody else says, yeah, what they did,
Yeah. I
what she
mean,
said, So,
yeah. What basically, I mean, and I won't bore it too much longer. What basically happened, 67, 69, I can't remember this moment. The California was given a waiver to set its own environmental standards for pollutants. It was never about CO2, by the way, which is another thing they'll fight in the Supreme Court. And for some reason, and I don't know the reason for it, but I do know what it said is while other states will never be allowed to create their own, they can, as a we'll grant them the courtesy to join with California and emulate their system completely. Now, I don't think any of them at the time in the 60s thought anybody joined California. And as I say, the states that are complying with California, including California, of course, account for somewhere between 40 and 45% of the of the total sales of all light duty automobiles in the United States. Now, and the other thing that that people don't think of, like, and this I know you know as well from our time working together, is that um, automakers make plans 4 to 6 to 10 years out. Dealers may make plans for next week. You know, if you've met a dealer, it's next week. Okay. But automakers make long-term plans. And the problem is, the Republicans are now, they scrap the damn EV mandate. They get rid of California waiver. And then somebody comes in, it's the Democrats, and they go way progressive to the left, and they want to bring incentives back, and they want to boost EV sales. The planet is dying, the whole goddamn bit, excuse me. But how does an automaker, okay, deal with that? And and let's understand, your industry is the tail that wags the automaker's dog, or the other way around.
The other way
Sorry,
around. Yeah, yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I mean, whatever they're producing, you're fixing.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you imagine? Okay. I'm trying to imagine myself in the position of an auto parts supplier, an auto service technician. Okay. I'm told I'm going to have to learn electrics. Well, I'm too old. I'll either retire or I'll learn them. Okay, so you decide to retire. You haven't retired yet, and then you find out right now that, oh, well, it looks like electrics are going away. Oh, I get to stay 4 more years. What happened if you retired a year ago and now you're kicking yourself in the head? And what do you study? I mean, this business is hard enough at all. I was right there with you in the middle of the computer age. And I remember this stuff, when we went, like,
Yeah, OBD2 came
I,
in right in the middle of
I was
the
right in the middle of
90s
when I
and
was there, right in the
yep,
middle of I was there. And
yep.
people, there were some people that didn't want to do it. They retired because of it. There was other people that jumped in and learned all this stuff. Now, can you imagine if 5 years in, okay, um, some rule came in and said, "Oh, guess what, guys? We're dumping fuel injection. We're going back to carburetors." I,
Nobody would know how to
so
fix them.
yeah, wait, carburetors? What's
Yeah.
this carburetor thing you speak of?
Again, this is going back. I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes here because it's winter and the rabbits are sleeping in them. But I remember when Ontario introduced its Drive Clean program,
Oh
and
yeah.
the
Oh
first
yeah.
exams had questions about carburation in them and
Yeah.
feedback carbs, and these were just they were testing the test to see how it would do, and everybody was failing these, and they couldn't figure out why. It's because nobody had seen one.
Yeah.
By the time they were bringing it in, nobody. What are you talking about? Like carb, like what are these from the 70s? What are you talking about? Nobody's seen these things. And so things can get out of step very quickly. And from recent podcast I did with JF Champagne from the AIA Canada, talking about essentially these same kinds of things. It's just we're going to have a very mixed bag out on the road, and it really is no doubt that these changes, north and south of the border, are going to really curtail EV sales. Um, Part of me is like, let the market decide and let consumers decide what they want to buy and what their wallet can stand. Makes a lot of sense to me. Um, but it certainly is disruptive in the interim, right?
If the consumer decides, it is generally a gradual program that you can manage. The untold topic of this is how political variability, volatility, it really makes all planning, whether you're a mechanic in a shop, all the way to the CEO of the largest corporation producing automobiles in the world. It makes your job impossible. You have no idea what to plan. I'm thinking of you guys. Do I buy new ZEV equipment? Well, at some time and point, I mean, you were told it was going to be 20% in 2026, maybe 40% by 2038. You got to buy new equipment. Well, if all EV incentives are gone, and the EV mandates, I think Quebec will hold out, but I don't think any of the others will survive.
Well,
At least,
and we're going into a period here, and not to kind of bring up our friend south of the border too. I think that it is generally accepted that in one way or the other, we're potentially in for a fair bit of economic pain over the next little while,
tariffs,
and
tariffs.
governments are going to be looking for ways. out of necessity to right size their budgets. They're going to need to spend money on other things, we can argue all day and all night about whether how much money they should be spending on various things, but I think there's certainly going to be a retargeting of resources that they do have, at least over the short to medium term, under what sounds to be as we're sitting here today talking in mid-January, a difficult, bumpy road ahead, right?
Well, let's discuss the elephant in the room. Literally, GOP, elephant, big country.
Nice segue.
I'm trying for as many puns as possible. The 25% tariff. Everybody knows about it. I mean, if there's a Canadian that doesn't know about those possible 25% tariffs, that's they haven't got a TV. And even if you're just a mechanic and you're not even the owner of a place, you're just a mechanic working for somebody, you know about it, and you have some vague knowledge, at least, that this is not going to be good. Okay. And so there's a number of things that are very interesting. I mean, I think everybody understands that if tariff goes to the States, it penalizes Canadian automakers because they won't be able to sell their cars in the States. It also penalizes American consumers because those tariffs will be passed along to them and their cars will be more expensive. That's been discussed to death. There's two subjects that, like, I like to go for longer term consequences because that happens the day he implements those tariffs. There's two longer term things that I think about. One is the real problem that Mr. Trump has identified, but has seemingly forgotten about already because he's got the attention span of a gnat, is that the Chinese are still out there. We talked about the Chinese for 6 months and invasions, and we have tariffs on them in Canada to match the tariffs in the States to prevent Chinese electric vehicles from coming in here. But the Chinese are still a problem. They haven't gone away, and it's not even absolutely assured. I think it's partially assured that having a tariff on Chinese cars will prevent them from coming in. But they're not gone away. They're and everything else. They're still an issue. So, and at the same time, Mr. Trump, instead of trying to bring us all together to fight against this Chinese, which Biden did by convincing us to do the same 100%, and also fighting, convincing Mexico to do something about BYD going there, he's trying to divide us. Like, how is it better for Canada, Mexico, and the United States be fighting amongst each other when we've got this big, huge enemy on the other side of the ocean saying we want to come in and invade you? That's just dumb, and we're not hearing about that anymore, and it's really important.
You're not going to get a disagreement from me. Again, rabbit holes and rabbit holes, but and it's been stated, but it bears stating again. We have been lockstep, working together in entirely intertwined economies, certainly between Canada and the U.S., and certainly in automotive for a generation and a half, maybe two now. My math may be off. This is how it works best. I mean, working together. The adversarial relationship that's being created is just literally just hurts everybody,
And now I want to scare you even more. Okay? This is the big one, and I've only heard two other people talk about it, and boy, oh boy, it scares the pants out of us. We are relying on Mr. Trump's attentions being transitory. He's, again, attention span of a gnat. So, I mean, we don't even know for sure if come January 22nd, we're getting 25% tariffs. He's saying, and it looks, Danielle Smith in Alberta said it's absolutely sure, but somebody whispers in this ear, whoever whispers in this ear, the last, just before he makes his inauguration speech, is probably whose opinion he goes with. So anyways, but the bigger problem is as I said, and many politicians south of the borders have said, that if the prices of cars get raised because of the tariffs, he will face a headwind. But on the other hand, there's going to be a lot of positives for America. Like right now, Honda, not far from where we are, is planning on building a $15 billion plants to build EVs in Canada. Well, unlike Stellantis and Volkswagen, which have started construction, they haven't done anything. So do you think they're going to build the plant here if they know 25% tariffs are going to stay? No, they're going to build it in the States. That's unquestioned. Okay, now imagine if he keeps his tariffs for a long time. Two things happen. One, more and more companies are going to go, okay, this isn't going away. We got to move to the States. Now, remember, historically, Republicans have been the one that are against tariffs. They're more pro-business. Democrats, okay, are typically more tariff prone. So imagine for a moment that the tariffs work, but for some other reason, because there's so much volatility, the Democrats are next in. Everybody's going, oh, well, once the Democrats are in and Trump's gone, all our problems go away. What if they see that the freaking tariffs are working? They're repatriating more business, okay, and they are more pro tariffs and protectionism in the first place. I've had at least a couple of people who are really high up in automakers say that if that happens, there is no, I don't mean reduced, there is no automotive industry. I'm serious. None, zero, zilch. It's all gone. If there's, like if the Trump thing lasts 3 or 4 years and the Democrats don't revoke it because they see it's working, just like Trump made a big noise about Obamacare, but then didn't do anything about it because it would have hurt his numbers. Bob's your uncle. There's no automotive industry. Again, I do not know the daily machinations of how that will affect your readers and listeners, but I do know it's going to affect them.
Right.
No
Right.
question about it at
Yeah,
all.
both in the specific and in certainly the macro, right? I mean, if there's one of the issues that we always say that this the aftermarket, the auto care industry, as it's come to be called, uh, tends to do well when the economy doesn't do so great, and uncertainty is if there's not if nothing else, uncertainty is going to rule the day for you know the time being for the as far as we can tell, and uncertainty keeps people driving the cars they're driving. Uncertainty keeps people's money in their pocket as much as they can. They start looking for, really efficient ways to spend it, which tends to a limit to help the independent aftermarket, right? So, you hate to be, saying this could be good news for the aftermarket. I don't know it's good news for anybody, but as far as would you rather be owning an independent shop or owning a car dealer? Uh,
Yeah. Well, two things. Everything you said is absolutely right, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But the second thing is, you call your business Aftercare now? When did the auto business go
the
whoa?
auto care
When
industry,
did you go
yes.
whoa? When did you guys go whoa? My God.
Well, it's been creeping in for a while. I still call it
Oh,
creeping
that's
in.
so depressing. That's so depressing. That's so
Well, I'm glad
Aftercare.
we could end on a depressing note. Now, David, you have a panel coming up. We're recording this middle of January, but you've got a virtual panel coming up
Exactly a week
at
from now. Exactly a week from now, on Wednesday, next Wednesday at 11 a.m. I
Wednesday,
have a
January the
22nd.
22nd.
22nd at 11 a.m. Tune in. It's a lot of what we discussed. This is a good practice for me because I'll be answering some of these questions at the time. But there'll be more. We'll be talking more about tariffs and stuff like that. I've got some experts on from the States. A guy named Joseph McCabe, who's a big forecaster down there. I've got Timothy Kane from Canada, who's a numbers guy telling us what is selling, what's not selling. Even your guys will be interested in that. I've got Scott McKenzie from a head guy in manufacturing and also policy at Toyota Canada, and myself. And it's going to be at least as illuminating as this, I hope, certainly. And you can register for it at driving.ca/events.
Right. I'll put something in the show notes so people can check it out. David Booth, Motormouth. We could go on, and we probably will, but for the out of the respect of the listener, we're going to kind of wrap it up. It's certainly looking forward to having David back on in the future, and we'll see how things shake out. And yes, take a look at the driving forward.
Driving into the future.
Driving into the Future panel coming up next week. That'll be 2 days after the inauguration. We'll see if there's more to say, right? More to talk about from our friends south of the border. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care of yourselves. Stay on top of things. Never miss an opportunity to talk to your local members of parliament or candidates thereof about the need for right to repair. It'll save consumers a lot of dollars. We're looking like we're going to be in a time where that is going to become increasingly important. And take care of each other too. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast.
Thanks for having me.